Coming up on Market to Market. Long-delayed rules for food nearly spoiled before they're released this week. Simple tasks in one drought-stricken California community prove monumental. And domestic oil byproducts can be both a blessing and a curse for farmers and ranchers. Those stories and market analysis as we break down USDA reports with Virgil Robinson next.
Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com. This is the Friday, September 11 edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Mike Pearson. The government elected by the people went back to work this week. Following the August recess, Congress reassembled in Washington and started the process of avoiding a government shutdown. A House committee greenlit, along party lines, legislation to ensure investors in U.S. Treasury bonds and Social Security recipients would get paid despite politically induced red tape. Unless Congress acts, the federal government is expected to exhaust its legal ability to borrow money sometime in November or December. Those months are prime time for family gatherings centered around food. And the fruits, nuts, and sweets could fall under greater scrutiny because of new policy released this week.
Food manufacturers and produce farmers must be even more vigilant about the cleanliness of their operations under new rules released Thursday by the Food and Drug Administration. The rules, once promoted as an Obama administration priority, come after recent outbreaks of deadly foodborne illnesses linked to ice cream, cantaloupe, and other foods. Under the new rules, food manufacturers will have to prepare detailed plans about how the food is handled, how they clean their facilities, and how they implement food safety measures. The most controversial rules, set to go into effect in October, would set new standards for farmers growing produce. These rules would require farmers to take new precautions against contamination, making sure workers' hands are washed, irrigation water is clean, and that animals stay out of fields. The FDA has worked with the agriculture sector to set reasonable standards, but some in the industry and in Congress say the standards will be a burden for businesses.
Much of California simmered in a stew of heat and humidity this week, bracing for more thunderstorms and flash floods. A ridge of high pressure combined with the remnants of Tropical Storm Linda provided the mixed bag of weather. Heat advisories extended from San Diego to San Francisco and beyond, baking an already dry area. Nearly every square acre of the Golden State is locked in some form of drought, and citizens of one Central Valley community are facing a challenge to do just the basics with what limited resources remain. Raquel Maria Dillon of the Associated Press reports.
California's drought has hit some places harder than others.
So at this time of day, people are cooking, washing, showering. The water goes way down.
Tino Lozano's well dried up almost a year ago.
See, there it goes again.
In parts of the Central Valley, filling buckets from a hose has become routine.
We have 6 people that run off these lines.
So his landlord ran a hose from a different well half a mile away to Tino's home and 5 others. The supply isn't reliable, especially in the afternoons.
My wife called me about 3 hours ago, and we ran out of water completely.
But it's one of many improvised solutions that allow families to wash, cook, drink, and flush a toilet.
Get another one, have ready for the next round. How we do it here.
In the tiny town of Oakeyville, most people can't afford to dig their private wells deeper to reach the receding groundwater. Across Tulare County, about 1,300 private wells have run dry, more than in the rest of the state combined.
I think it's hitting us the worst to the low-income people, the farm workers, smaller towns, smaller communities. The cities don't have this problem, or the farmers don't have the problem.
Agriculture is the main industry here, and despite the drought, the big farms are still going strong.
They drill deeper, our wells go drier first because ours are smaller.
Just across the street, a new pistachio orchard is going in. And down the road, dairy cows cool off under sprinklers.
They use quite a bit of water to irrigate their corn and their hay, but that's what feeds the cows. And that's what gives us everybody jobs too.
But the people who do those jobs, like Francisco Zuniga, can't shower off after work because their borrowed well water has been sitting in the sun all day, getting scalding hot. Jose Vasquez stopped tending his backyard garden because there's no water for his onions and tomatoes. But in many yards in Oakeyville, something else is sprouting up. Water tanks, courtesy of state disaster relief. Thanks to jerry-rigged plumbing, pumps, and tanks, Maria Marquez can give her granddaughters a bath.
Pues está uno preocupado por eso, nada más.
Everyone's worried, she says. She and her daughters can't afford to move because no one will pay a fair price for a house without running water.
Comprarnos, pero quieren comprarnos bien barato.
Plus, she likes living out here in the country. So, with the help of a nonprofit, Marquez is trying to organize her neighbors to create a small utility, tap into drought relief grants, and drill a well for Oakeyville.
It'll take a year, 2 years.
The response has been strong, but the ambitious plan will cost $2 million and take at least 2 years to build. Residents hope it will save their town from this slow-moving disaster.
A forecast this week from the International Energy Agency predicts a sharp drop in oil supply from U.S. and other non-OPEC countries because of the continued low prices for crude. The decline predicted would be the biggest in over 2 decades. Benchmark oil prices plunged to the $45 range this week, down from nearly $100 per barrel a year ago. And while the domestic oil industry has boomed in recent years, byproducts of exploration have been both a problem and a plus for struggling farmers and ranchers. Josh Bittner explains.
For us out here, it'd be just good. It was sterilized. There was no vegetation whatsoever.
Their livestock have grazed the high plains of eastern New Mexico for generations, but the domestic energy boom of the past decade has some ranchers saying, there goes the neighborhood. Since Carl and Justin Johnson lease grazing land from the state, the cattlemen can't prevent oil companies from drilling there. And the side effects on the land have been disenchanting.
They just don't give a damn. The oil companies, they could do what we ask them to do, and it wouldn't even make a blip on their expense sheet.
5 years ago, a ruptured pipe released 420,000 gallons of oil field wastewater here. The salty byproduct killed off vegetation, leaving the acreage desolate. The accident was just one of dozens the ranchers say they've endured, spending tens of thousands of dollars trying to rein in oil and gas drillers for alleged practices that can kill wildlife and threaten freshwater supplies.
See over there, this is all saltwater disposal leaks.
An Associated Press analysis of data from leading oil and gas-producing states found over a 6-year period 180 million gallons of wastewater, or brine, was discharged. And while oil spills capture the most attention, brine can be more damaging. In the AP study, several cases recorded wastewater levels double those of oil.
Brine spills are a huge issue. Anywhere that you have oil and gas production, you're going to have releases.
Soil experts say oil is eventually absorbed via natural processes, but salt-saturated ground dries up, kills plants, and prevents new growth.
Basically, that land that's been impacted has been taken.
It will recover, but it'll probably take about 5 years before we start really growing anything right in this area.
In Texas, the country's top oil-producing state, soil tainted by brine spills in 2012 is finally showing signs of life.
The pipeline ruptured over here. It flowed through the terrace system out into my field, and then it started draining out of the field, and then the salt stayed on the surface to a certain extent, causing the damage out here.
Meanwhile, in drought-stricken California, the Kern River oil field churns out $15 billion in annual oil revenue. Kern County is the #1 oil-producing county in the nation, and the Golden State's oil industry faces scrutiny for its use of natural resources.
primary use of water in the oil industry is to generate steam. Most people think it's a pool, but it's not. It's in the sand. Put a little steam in it, drive it through the sand, and so that increases your production from 25, and some people say they can get 65% of what's down there.
Kern County could be called a case study of how sometimes oil and water do mix. Unlike fracking, which uses water, sand, and chemicals to flush oil to the surface quickly, steam injection coaxes sluggish crude out of the ground. But oil isn't the only commodity on tap.
When they pump oil, the oil is down in the formation. It's oil and water. And so when they pump the oil out, they pump out 1 part oil, 10 parts water.
The problem is what to do with all that water. It can be injected at high cost below existing aquifers. Or, as in the case of Coelho Water District, oil field water can be cleaned and blended with other sources to provide desperately needed irrigation water.
It's a lot cheaper, and we'd be missing out on a lot of water, especially in a year like this. It's half of our supply this year. So if we didn't have this water, we'd be pulling crops out, and farmers would be going out of business.
For over 20 years, the utility, serving roughly 90 farmers on 34,000 acres outside Bakersfield, has brought water from the area's top oil producer into agricultural use. Chevron Corporation uses gravity separation technology and walnut shell filters to remove as much oil and impurities as possible. The resulting produced water is delivered via pipeline to Coelho Water District, where it is cleaned again and mixed with existing water. The extra 65 acre-feet per day provides insurance, while regular sources taper off from drought.
What this project does is it reduces our pressure on the Sacramento-San Joaquin Delta, and it's also reducing the draw upon our groundwater.
Coelho's end product is tested by the state. But recent media reports implied findings by environmental activists showed the water and food grown with it might not be safe.
The sodium is around maybe 140 to 160 milligrams per liter. Most agricultural products like it less than 160. So we blend that down and get it down to good irrigation quality. It does have some other chemicals in it, but they are well below the drinking water standards.
Chevron refuted the negative reports, which the oil company discredited through scientific testing of its own. But California's Regional Water Quality Control Board is collecting data independently to verify the information. And both Chevron and Coelho are eager for the agency's report.
We're waiting for the state to really come out and give us that clean bill of health.
It's safe. I don't think you would want to drink it every day, you know. But we haven't seen any problems with our trees. There's trees and vines out here that's been here for many, many years using that water.
Roy Perucci manages an 80-acre pistachio farm in Coelho Water District. He says produced water from Chevron has been a trusted source for his operation, which uses 100 million gallons of water per year.
You're never going to find a risk-free form of energy, whether we're talking renewables or fossil fuel development.
Oil byproducts have been both blessing and curse in rural America. And fossil fuel advocates say even though domestic energy production is up, wastewater spills, by proportion, are down.
The men and women who work in the oil and gas industry are absolutely committed to spill prevention. They live in these communities. They want their environment to be preserved as well.
Oil companies pay to clean up spills, but it's the law in most states. And even though the threat of wastewater hazards can be mitigated, these New Mexico ranchers fear the land will never be the same. For Market to Market, I'm Josh Bittner.
Next, the Market to Market report.
The USDA lowered estimates on the corn crop and raised soybean projections Friday, sending the markets in different directions for most of the day, but both finished up over the holiday-shortened trading period. For the week, December wheat gained 17 cents, while the nearby corn contract rallied 24 cents. Light trading ahead of Friday's report pushed soybean prices higher as the November soybean contract rose nearly 8 cents for the week. December meal prices followed along, increasing $2.50 per ton. In the softs, December cotton had a moderate rally, advancing 51 cents per hundredweight. Over in the dairy parlor, October Class 3 milk futures declined 36 cents. In the livestock sector, a mixed week as the October cattle contract increased 12 cents, October feeders fell 60 cents, and the October lean hog contract declined by nearly $2. In the currency markets, the U.S. dollar index dropped more than 1%. Oil continued its slide, finishing $1.42 lower. COMEX gold fell again this week by more than $18 per ounce, and the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index fell nearly 3 points to settle at 364.45. Here now to lend us his insight on these and other trends is one of our regular market analysts, Virgil Robinson. Virgil, welcome back.
Hello, Mike. Nice to be with you.
And we are really glad to have you this week, coming as we are Friday evening after the crop production and WASDE reports were released earlier today. Let's talk about this grain market. And I want to start with the wheat market. We did not have a crop production report, but we did see the World Board make some changes there. Tell us a little bit about what you saw in the wheat market.
Yeah, WASDE is projecting record global wheat production, Mike, which I don't think comes as a major surprise. Bottom line, there's about 116 days worth of global use on hand, which by historic comparison is a big number. So it's going to be difficult, I think, for wheat to mount any kind of a serious price advance. It will follow corn to some extent, Mike, but the other concern I would have there, given the supply of wheat, is that I'm seeing, and very visually seeing, the value of wheat now ratchet down towards corn in an effort to try and become a feed ingredient. So I think we need to be aware of that moving forward. While you mentioned the corn numbers were at face value friendly, moderately bullish, there are some other concerns regarding feed grains. Wheat is one of them. Sorghum would be another.
Yes, and sorghum's a topic we're going to discuss in our Market Plus segment, which can be found on our website. So tune in there if you are a grower of sorghum. Now, on the wheat market, we did see a 17-cent rally this week. In your mind, I mean, is that cue to maybe make some sales?
Gosh, I'm hoping people have made sales well in advance of this. We're at contract lows. This isn't ideally a very good spot to initiate a first sale. Now, if you're lugging inventory, relatively modest or a small percentage of your old crop inventory, I'd continue, I think, to hold that if you have the wherewithal to do that, Mike. Making a sale here at or near contract lows is probably not the best decision.
Okay. Now, jumping down into the corn market, we saw the USDA crop production report cut the expected corn national yield by just a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what this could mean for the corn market heading into harvest.
Well, it gave it a boost today, at least futures, Mike, and if my analysis was correct, most of the cash markets tracked right along with the advance in futures, which would imply there's demand for immediate corn, and I think that's true in many instances. $4 will remain, I think, a pretty significant barrier for cash corn. I mentioned global days of use. Mike, in corn, it's about 70. Last year it was 73. So certainly there's been a reduction in supply globally, but to suggest it's monumental would be misleading. So a rally back towards $4, I think, would be an opportunity for corn in hand. The new crop contract, I think, again, I'd be willing to look at some type of modest incremental sale if new crop futures got to the 430 to 445 area, and that's going to require about a 30-cent bump from here.
Now, last year we saw the October rally begin about the first week in October. That October 3rd or 4th last year was the low. Could we be seeing it start maybe a little early on this report?
Well, you've defined the 5-year seasonal pretty accurately, Mike. In both corn and beans, it's traditionally in and around the first 10 days, business days of October, so seasonally there could be some additional improvement here. I think the futures market has a relatively healthy net speculative short position, some of it probably eliminated today. There's probably more that I think will surface. The issue is going to be in areas, particularly in those areas where the corn crop is good, and that seems to be northwest and west of the Mississippi River. Your basis situation is not going to be very healthy. Believe it or not, there's still in select areas old crop corn piled on the ground that from last year that's not been moved, believe that or not.
Yeah.
So I don't sense a critical shortage of corn.
Okay.
The opportunity for a modest price improvement, yes indeed.
Make some sales. Moving right into the soybean market, this has been a market that has been very tough for producers in particular to read and to gauge where it's going. USDA today raised the expected national soybean yield to 47.1. Where is this market going?
Mike, again, globally, soybean production is projected to be record large. So clearly the uncertainty of what size crop we have is yet in play. Most of the privates that I have privilege to see in terms of crop models, yield models, are all in denial of USDA's number.
Okay.
All are beneath it, with the exception perhaps of one.
Okay.
We'll know better in October. A better sampling will take shape in October. If it does happen to stay around 3.9 billion bushel, the concern I would have would be more in the spring of 2016, when the prospect of what could be something close to 100 million metric South American or Brazilian crop comes on stream. Then, of course, you've got way too many. So could there be a bounce here? Absolutely. As mentioned, October is traditionally a period where that occurs. If soybeans were to bounce here 50 to 80 cents a bushel, something like that, if you've not made a sale, I'd certainly make one. If you've incrementally made sales, I'd add to it.
Add to it,
yes.
And get ahead of that South American crop before that comes online.
Now that's a prospect, Mike. It's
Yep.
not a given.
Right.
It's a prospect, but that is the risk factor looking forward.
Okay. Looking down at these livestock markets, we did see the October cattle contract hold relatively steady this week. What's your take on the live cattle and the beef market here in the short term, Virgil?
A couple things. I think we've got a classic demand illustration here. Cattle slaughter is off about 7% year over year. Beef production only off about 4.5% because of heavier weights, Mike. So supply-wise, it is in fact a smaller supply. And when you look at futures prices, if that's our only indicator, they are currently, at least the October-December contracts, anywhere from $12 to $13 100 below last year. So clearly there's a reason why, and I think that reason is demand driven. There's a lot of competitive protein available in the way of pork and poultry. Perhaps the consumer has backed away to some extent from record retail prices. So we clearly have that issue in front of us. Now, having said that, that's kind of history. The future, I think fed supplies are not going to increase, at least if these cattle on feed numbers are accurate of the last few months, in the fall, early part of 2016. So I think we can sustain a fed market in this 150-ish area,
okay,
you know, which would be $3 to $5 above tonight's prevailing values.
Okay.
Futures, in my mind, offer little, if any, hedging opportunity. If you're a trader, perhaps it's a different story, and I won't address that. But for hedging opportunities, I see
And
nothing,
they haven't
nothing
for
of value.
18 months now in the
Been a
cattle
long
market.
time.
Feeder cattle, expecting to see this continue to slide down as this heifer retention takes place and the cow herd begins to build?
If fed cattle prices firm up a bit here, and I think they will, Mike, I think the feeder cattle market will kind of flatten out here and perhaps even improve a bit. In some regions, you could have some real geographical phenomena. If you have a big feed grain supply, the demand for feeder cattle probably going to be very high. So I don't think they're going to fall out of bed from prevailing values, particularly as mentioned if feed is cheaper and fed cattle prices are a little bit stronger here the balance of this year into 2016.
You can walk that grain off the farm. People are going to try to do it.
I think that'll be the attitude. Now, how profitably remains to be seen. But at present, I think that's the scenario that I would paint.
Okay. Now, you mentioned part of the beef conundrum is this growing, the growing tonnage in pork. Now, let's talk about the pork market. Virgil, we've got a lot of animals out there. Pork market's held relatively stable. Do you see that continuing?
I think the demand for pork simply on a retail price basis, Mike, will remain pretty firm. Export sales have kind of waffled, and we have some issues with certain buyers with regards to medications, vaccines, and the like. I don't know how those policy issues will be resolved. But I think the balance of 2015, producers currently have anywhere from a $12 to $20 per head profit. I think we'll sustain that through the balance of 2015 into 2016. If I were looking for a hedging opportunity that I thought was pretty attractive, basis the October lean hog futures contract, that 68 to 69 area would be attractive from my perspective. February, first quarter of 2016, 70, 71 cents. I think those would make awfully good hedges for fourth quarter and first quarter pork producers.
To maintain this pork market in the mid-60s to low 70s, do we really need that retail beef price to stay high so consumers get the perceived value of buying pork?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's an accurate statement, Mike.
Something that's going to have to stick around.
And again, consumer spending has been pretty healthy for various things. I don't think beef demand's horrible. I just think it's pulled back from levels that were unusually strong and high in 2014. So beef demand will continue to be, in my opinion, attractive and support fed prices at values higher than this through the balance of the year.
All right. Well, Virgil, thank you so much for taking the time to join us this week. That wraps up this edition of Market to Market. But Virgil and I will continue our discussion, as I mentioned, and we will answer some of your questions in the Market Plus segment available on our website. You'll also find audio podcasts of this discussion, as well as streaming video of the program exclusively at that Market to Market website. You can also interact with us through Twitter and Facebook at Market to Market. So until next time, thanks for watching. I'm Mike Pearson. Have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content. Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com.